You're entering Corsi Nation.
It's Jerome Corsi, and today it is June 5th. It's Thursday, and thank you for joining us here at CorsiNation.com. And you can reach me on X at CorsiJerome1, at CorsiJerome 1, number 1, and also on Substack, JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. And we're doing Substacks almost every day now, so you can follow us there. The story I want to lead off with is a kind of a reflection here on what's going on with President Trump and Putin. They had a phone conversation yesterday, and it's been widely reported that Zelenskyy has, done everything he can to cause World War III. They had a drone strike, as you know, over the weekend on Russian airfields deep in Russia and destroyed a lot of the Russian bombers. And then they blew up a section of the Crimea bridge again, which Zelensky's liking to do. So now Zelenskyy is saying he wants a truce until a meeting with Putin can be arranged. The guy Zelensky's all over the board, and he's completely a nutcase. I'm pretty convinced that Zelenskyy knows he's done, that he essentially is an actor who's out of his league, very deeply into cocaine. And he's trying to cause World War III. Then he wants a truce, and Putin's had it. I think Putin's going to have a massive strike. I think Putin will probably launch a major offensive and just try to take Kiev now. And I don't think there's any way he's going to be stopped. Of course, then the Europeans are all going to go berserk and say, well, we have to retaliate to make sure Putin doesn't take Kiev. And the Europeans are going to want to go to war, which is insane. The Europeans have no idea going to war is what it means anymore. They couldn't fight World War II. How are they going to fight this war? Hitler just rolled his way through Belgium into France, and it was nothing that any of the Europeans could do to stop him. So now Germany today, I'm going to cover this in a minute. Well, we'll cover it right now. Germany's about bankrupt. I mean, all the stories coming out of Germany are Germany has no money. So Germany's a nation with major insolvencies throughout 2025 and even into 2026. That's that the insurancer Allianz is saying. It comes after a disastrous 2024, which saw a record number of bankruptcies all through Germany. Well, of course, Germany's going bankrupt because the energy is so expensive. They closed down their nuclear plants. And so Allianz Trade forecasts an overall increase of 11% in corporate insolvencies in Germany this year, reaching 24,400 cases. A further 3% rise to 25,050 cases is anticipated in 2026. These insolvencies are estimated at putting 210,000 jobs at risk across Germany. So the first quarter of this year, 16 large German companies with revenues of 50 million euro or more filed for insolvency. It was a slight decrease of 3 cases compared with the same period last year. It's double the number in the first quarter of 2023. Okay, so now Germany is run by the left and the Greens and the net zero crowd. And with, the Volkswagen's going to close 3 plants and cut 30,000 workers. Okay, so the whole idea here that Germany is going to be, which was one point the industrial power of the EU, is going to have energy problems, going to be at war with Russia through Ukraine. They're going to put an army in. No, they're going to give some missiles and weapons to Zelenskyy and let him fire them off into Russia and then have World War III. I mean, the whole thing is insane. It has no rhyme or reason to it. Okay, so what's Trump saying? Well, Trump doesn't know. Trump is basically saying he didn't get his big peace deal. So Trump is saying, well, I guess, there's nothing much he can do. And probably there isn't much he can do. Because if Zelenskyy is going to constantly be aggressive like this and constantly cause problems every time he's turning around, what can anybody do? Okay, so this I think is this I think is one of the major issues that we're seeing in the development of this geopolitics, is that the World War III is in a sense actually started already. It's just hopefully not going to go nuclear. The two things that are likely to happen here is, I think, uh, the best solution would be if someone could replace Zelenskyy, if they would come to their senses and hold an election in Ukraine. But I don't think that's going to happen. So Putin is going to come in and he's going to have a massive offensive, and Europe is going to react. And I hope Trump just stays calm and does not go along with the European crowd wanting to intensify the war. The best solution for Donald Trump is simply to cut off the money from Zelenskyy, cut off the money altogether, cut off supplying him with any new weaponry, and basically start talking sense to Zelenskyy and the rest of the world that we're not going to go to World War III over Ukraine. Okay, and that's, I think, the only solution here. Let Europe is overrun right now with Muslims, but they've let in from Africa and from all across the Middle East, and so it's now inundated with a group of Muslims that will not assimilate. We've seen riots in Paris, destroying some of the most luxury part of Paris, right around the Champs-Élysées, where the shopping areas are, where some of the best hotels are, and Paris is suffering. And there's no easy solution to this. The Muslims aren't going to go back home right now, and there is no incentive for them to leave. There's no incentive for them to assimilate. Okay, so what you're seeing with Zelenskyy is an intention to escalate the war, because there's the idea in these European countries is that if they have war industries, the bankers will finance it, and the jobs will be created making munitions. Okay, the problem is they don't want to field an army. The Europeans don't want to go to war. Even Zelenskyy is having a hard time getting troops to go into battle just to be slaughtered. And so they can produce weapons and launch them at each other, drones and the like. But the fact is, none of this is productive. All of this is simply more and more destruction and more going into war, and it'll be more of the same. So my guess is that, we're going to see the next intensification when this offensive starts from Putin, and then we're back into the risky scenario of waiting to see how fast or if it escalates. And it's going to take some real sense to make it not escalate. Okay, so now we're struggling here with that situation while Iran is still wanting to insist on enriching uranium. And again, attacking Iran will only perpetuate war in the Middle East, because war, again, then the next generation of all the people who were killed in Iran after revengeance, and they want to get back at Israel. And it'll produce all the world's hatred again of Israel, because Israel is going to defend itself. And if Iran is close to a nuclear weapon, Israel is going to feel even more an existential threat than it felt after the October attack from Hamas. So we've got both of these situations, which President Trump has not been able to resolve, because the countries involved and the people involved are determined to have war to a conclusion. And both of these wars are going to have to conclude one way or the other. And they're only going to conclude probably with more violence. Eventually, I think Trump will allow Netanyahu to clean out Gaza and to make Gaza unlivable, maybe for 10 years, unlivable, before it can be rehabilitated, if it's ever rehabilitated. And Putin's going to launch an attack, and then eventually Trump may just sit back and say, let Putin take Ukraine. Let Ukraine be Putin's problem. But again, Trump is going to have to make some fundamental decisions here. And if he wants peace, he's going to have to pull the money out from under Ukraine, and essentially do the same with Iran. Put the type of sanctions he had on Iran before. That's the only way to squeeze Iran. But Iran may be days away from producing a nuclear weapon, and if they are, they're going to get attacked by Israel, whether Trump approves of it or not. Israel is going to defend itself. And if Israel senses or has intelligence that Iran's going to make a nuclear weapon now and try to drop it on Tel Aviv, the Netanyahu government is not going to sit around and wait for that to happen. So I see both situations going into more violence, and Donald Trump is going to have to realize pretty quickly that maybe in the Middle East with Iran, it'd be better just to get it over with, because Iran is not going to stop on this insane intention to create nuclear weapons. But with the Ukrainian situation, the best thing to do would be to pull out of NATO and to pull out of Ukraine and tell the Ukrainians and Zelenskyy and a whole bunch of them, you're going to crash. The economies are going to crash, and Europe is going to go into disarray. Probably the EU won't survive. This is the playing out of a scenario that is built into the situation. The EU can't survive. The EU cannot work with all these different economies and try to have a homogeneous policy that's going to be one policy fits all. And if they decide their solution is to go to World War III, then preventing it's going to be very difficult. But I think that the hope is that Donald Trump, who is the art of the deal, is going to figure out to take the money away from Ukraine and to let Netanyahu, if necessary, attack Iran, to try to say, okay, this ending of Iran's power will allow the Middle East to settle into much more of a stable situation. Okay, now if we get this play of situation over the next few days, which we're going to watch very carefully, I think this is going to be a pivotal moment in world history. Either we're going to have World War III, nuclear weapons. I mean, there's so much going on with, the economics here are in disarray. And with the economics in disarray, you're not going to have very much stability politically. And that's just a fundamental problem here. And Trump is going to have to deal with it. Now, I'm going to very quickly, remind everybody again, and Chris showed the book. I want people to get this book on how a coming global crash is going to create an historic gold rush, because it's happening. Gold is right now at $3,393 an ounce, and silver's at $35.78 an ounce. Silver was at $32 an ounce just a while ago, and gold, not very long ago, was trading at $1,800 an ounce. If you talk to, I want to give you the 800 number to call to get a copy of this book. It is 1-800-519-6268. It's a short book. It's an easy read, but it will bring you up to speed on topics like the BRICS nations. It'll bring you up to topics on, the economic situation of the United States, where we now are at $37 trillion in debt. We're paying over $1 trillion a year on the interest of the debt. And there's some fundamental solutions here, which is to get rid of the Federal Reserve, because we don't need to be paying interest on money that we're creating that is basically a cryptocurrency. The dollar's not backed by anything except the full faith and credit of the United States, and that's been downgraded now twice just recently by Moody's. Okay, so if you talk to Swiss America, you can get a self-directed IRA. And every one of these shows, I'm trying to implore you to do this, because gold's going to increase in value, and the stock market is going to be a very, very risky ride. Stock market was down yesterday with all this international turmoil, and I think the stock market is going to probably continue to be down until the tension and everything else in the Middle East gets a little bit more subsided. Right now, we are in a situation where the world is in chaos, and chaos is not going to settle out very easily. So 1-800-519-6268. There's a lot of good information on Swiss America. I just wrote a new white paper on the fact that on these Basel III rules, international rules in banking, you're going to have gold be able to be a tier 1 asset, which means it can be valued at 100% of its market value on the books of a bank. So banks around the world are buying gold, including central banks. And when banks are doing it, you should too. If you do it right now with Swiss America, you can get this Walking Liberty $50 offer. You buy 250 of these coins at virtually their value in gold and silver, rather, in Walking Liberty $50 in silver. But at least you'll own some silver. Own some silver and some gold. It'll appreciate. If all your value's in dollars, you're going to be joining the rest of the middle class, having to go day to day finding out whether or not you can buy food. The middle class around the world is getting squeezed. And we're seeing all of these things, the result of this globalism that we're not yet done with. Okay, now I want to go to one more topic. And then, Chris, I want you to come on and comment. We'll have a little discussion on this. But the topic I want to get to is that we're getting this, the big, beautiful bill is coming through Congress. And Elon Musk is saying that, it's not cutting anything. Well, as soon as you let House and Senate have access to spending money, they're going to just spend money. There's no incentive for them not to spend money. And so therefore, you're not going to get budget cuts. The budget cuts are going to have to come from Trump cutting budgets, and they're going to have to come by executive action. Congress is just going to keep spending. And there's no limit in sight to how much they will spend. We have $100 trillion in debt. And the non-discretionary part of the budget is taken over. Non-discretionary Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They have to be paid. And so the contingent liabilities of the United States are enormous because population's getting older, and we're going to have more Social Security payments. We're going to have more Medicare, Medicaid. And it's going to have to be funded somewhere. The only way it can be funded right now is simply to print more money. And that system is just going to crash. The reason I want this bill to pass is it has in it some fundamental tools that we can use to redo the financial system in the United States. We're going to have to do that too. Every institution I look at around the world is broken right now. And we're in a time, it certainly feels like end days, because we're in a time where Christians are being persecuted. You're going to have the mark of the beast to work. I mean, if you're not properly, I was reading the Gateway, Gatestone Institute had a very good piece today about these 15-minute cities which exist in China. And so the technology permits massive surveillance, and all through Europe, the censorship laws are insane. In Great Britain, somebody just got convicted and prosecuted of burning a Quran. It's a hate speech. And here's the war on city dwellers, that basically this whole climate change and everything else, all this, grifter ideas have done nothing but allowed countries like China to have all these surveillance towers. In fact, there was a picture in that Gateway Gatestone Institute article of the surveillance towers in China, which are pretty frightening. Let's see if we can get that up, because it to me was, it's just when you see it, it's startling. How, look at that tower. Chris is showing it. It's in Tiananmen Square, and it's just this big pole, and it's got arms out of it. It's got all these cameras on it, so that it's doing facial recognition of everyone who passes. And if you go outside of your 15-minute city, they can turn your electronics off, especially if your social credit score is not good enough. Now, so China is trying to do a massive surveillance of the population and succeeding at it. They don't trust their people because the people will rip the government apart. And the MAGA movement is ready to rip the government apart. And Steve Bannon is saying, where's the indictments, Kash Patel? Where are the dismantling of the FBI? Where's the dismantling of the CIA? Why are we? Babylon B's got a very interesting article out today saying that it's a joke article, but it's saying that the GOP who are elected in Congress are doing their usual of everything that everything they're actually doing violates the reason people voted for them. People voted for MAGA in order to dismantle the government, in order to reduce the bureaucracy, in order to cut the federal spending. Well, we're not going to cut the federal spending. So the new solution I'm going to propose is one that I think Donald Trump is working on, which is we have a sovereign wealth fund of cryptocurrencies, XRP, two or three others. XRP can be a system of international trade. It could instantly transfer money from one country to another without having to go into dollars and out of dollars. The SWIFT system doesn't work. SWIFT system takes 5-6 days sometimes. Well, a lot of currencies fluctuate in that time when you're trying to buy and trade through the dollar with a foreign country. The time it takes is outrageous. It needs to be done instantaneously. Okay, so if we have a sovereign wealth fund and we say we're going to start creating sovereign cryptocurrencies, they can be backed by gold, they can be backed by nothing, but at least they'll be privately run so their supply will be restricted. If that's the case, you can pay Social Security in XRP. If we did that, a lot of 21-year-olds would be delighted because XRP today is trading at under 3, and it could well be trading at thousands within the not too distant future. So you could be creating wealth with the currency if it was properly managed. So you increase the purchasing power, increase the value of the currency by using it and restricting its supply. We don't restrict the supply of the dollars because they're under the control of politicians, and politicians like to spend. Okay, so Chris, what I'm fundamentally saying is that the entire system is broken. You've got a group of greedhead power mongers in the bureaucracy who want to set the rules, and mostly the bureaucracy is not creative. It does nothing. These people are paper pushers, but yet they're hard to fire and get rid of. So, Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, there you go. It's very difficult to get rid of those who are entrenched in the deep state. Excuse me, but you look at this big beautiful bill. It sounds great. Every bill sounds great. Like the Inflation Reduction Act. It was
Oh,
supposed to
yeah,
be,
right,
which became the Inflation Enhancement Act, and a slush fund for Democrat pals, basically. Uh,
right.
I'll digress from that. So the Republicans do the same thing. They market something. Barely anybody reads the bill and tells you what's in it. Meantime, a lot of these people put pork on it so they can just ride it onto the bill, add more to spending, and all of a sudden, you don't codify what Doge cuts. You don't, you don't take care of things. People are going to be against the bill. I get that. I'm in the middle on this. There are positives in the bill, but we should at least make this as a step towards reducing the debt, and then the latter is possible. The latter is possible, and it can be accomplished here with some extra work.
Yeah, but you'll never get it voted through. I mean, these I've watched Congress do this now for
True.
50, 60 years, and these big bills are always a monstrosity. They're all,
They're made
and
for nobody to read.
they're impossible. I mean, the compromises that are made and the things that are done in them, by the time they get through, they've spent more money, they've created a bigger bureaucracy, and they're so complicated that nobody really understands what they're about.
Mhm.
And because this huge legislation, Congress has become dysfunctional. Is what I'm saying.
It's
It,
been there
we're,
for a while.
it's been there, but it's now at crisis points because a dysfunctional Congress, when things are relatively good economically, is a nuisance, but it's not going to throw us into a huge depression. The problem is when the economy needs a solution, which it does. We have to find a way that if we go to $40 trillion in debt, when we're headed there, and then we have to pay more than $1 trillion on the interest, eventually it crashes and burns. Okay, now I don't know when that is, but eventually we have a crisis with it. It doesn't work anymore. And then Congress has got to solve it. And Congress will have to do a big, production with another big bill. These are formulas for ending into world wars or into depressions or whatever. But the broken system can't be fixed by within the system. That's the problem. It's just like trying to solve the war with Zelenskyy deciding that he's going to want to solve the war. Now, what does Zelenskyy want? He wants to maintain his revenue. His wife with spending millions of dollars in jewelry, him buying mansions all over the world, including the United States. That's what Zelenskyy wants. He's managing his global politics for his personal advantage. And when you start doing that, you're not going to get a solution to a problem. You're going to get it made worse. And right now, the system is so broken in so many different ways. I don't know how you fix it. Now, the best solution I can think of is if Donald Trump can basically continue to do executive orders, continue to say and don't listen to the advice in Washington, D.C. Don't listen to the, Lindsey Grahams who want us to continue war with Ukraine. Don't worry that the New York Times is going to say that Trump is soft on Putin and try to urge Trump to go to war with Putin, which somehow the left wants to do right now. It's to me just insane. Chris?
It's like you're saying, there is an economic factor to all of this. A lot of these nations are thinking, hey, maybe this will bring us back into the swing. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I'm not sure at this point that we're in the same. I know we're having problems like we've had in the 20th century, but I'm not sure if war would have the same effect on nations' economies as it did during World War II. Yes, we can overproduce. Yes, certain sectors are going to do better, but what will that do overall? Are we because of the diverse amount of sectors we have now, the way the economies work at this point, and and with an easier access to trading with each other, I guess, if you will. What would war actually be technically good business as it used to be? I think that's where I'm going here. It's kind of roundabout.
I don't think it. I
But
don't
doesn't
think it
seem to
is.
be. Right.
It-
They're gonna
it-
find it's not gonna work.
it's good for some people, and it's good for the bankers. It's good for the arms manufacturers, etc. But for the economy as a whole, it's not good. And Donald Trump is just going into his second 100 days. We're not yet at 6 months of the presidency. I think by the time we've done a year of the presidency, there will be some significant changes. I think there will be indictments coming out of the Department of Justice. I'm seeing right now, for instance, Wisconsin, the one of the I do see action coming from God's Five Stones, and very impressive action. In that we're now in touch with Doge. We're in touch with the Department of Justice. Department of Justice is taking action in Wisconsin. They're saying to the Wisconsin Election Commission that unless they allow this cleaning up of their voter rolls, which are a complete mess, they're going to cut off federal funding for the federal election commissions. They're not going to provide any more money to the Wisconsin Election Commission unless they allow for there to be a complaint process where civilians can come in and question why the voting roll is such a mess. And the officer who's doing this is this Hanmet Dillon, who's an assistant attorney general in the Civil Rights Division. And Michael Gates, who's a deputy assistant general. Those two are, and the letter was signed by Hanmet Dillon, Dillon, and it's telling Wisconsin's Election Commission that, this is from the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, no more money unless you have a uniform and non-discriminatory way to uh, allow people to complain about your messed up voter rolls. Well, this is just the beginning. And what's going to come down the pike, I think, is Donald Trump is going to, probably in August or September, issue an executive order saying that our election system is so messed up that the states cannot use their existing voter rolls. They're going to have to do them over again with voter IDs and proof of citizenship. I think we're headed in that direction. I think we're headed in these directions where Donald Trump is going to say, okay, we're going to reduce these bureaucracies. The Supreme Court, I believe, is going to give Donald Trump authority to reduce these bureaucracies dramatically because they're not in the Constitution. If Donald Trump wants to essentially take an axe to the federal bureaucracy, I think he's going to be allowed to do so. Chris?
That's what we elected him to do. That's
Right.
exactly what we need him to do right now. But I understand what Elon Musk's point of view is that this bill does not address much of that. It addresses a bit of it, but not enough of it.
Well,
I get it. You work for about 6 months. Oh no, 3 4 months. Was it 100? I guess 130, 180 days or something like that. You work for all that time. You find a way to knock down the bureaucracy, unbloat the government, and you find Congress doesn't want to do that, and the president's kind of saying, "Well, let's just take little steps at this point." I get it.
well, Trump is going to get this bill through, and then he's going to continue to cut.
That's what has to
Donald
happen.
Trump is. It's got to happen. We need a president who, at this point, is going to use the powers of the executive and cut the bureaucracy, get a new economic situation structured, a fundamental change in our economics, where the dollar is essentially going to be parked in its fiat state. And we're going to have to return to gold standard or some value of the dollar. But I do think a cryptocurrency solution is in the works. And it's going to take some of these new, bolder solutions and ideas, which Donald Trump is capable of doing. So eventually, I think we're going to see him saying, we're done with Zelenskyy. We're done with the Federal Reserve. We're going to move the bureaucracy to Death Valley if that's what it takes to get rid of it. And, this whole idea we're going to build a big new building for the Department of Justice. No, fire half of them and use the buildings for veteran housing or something.
Use the old USAID office. There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's
Let's cover one
consolidate.
or two more things, and we'll wrap it up for today. But the world's a mess, and I think it's always been a mess. Okay, so the United States is resisting air cover for this European reassurance force in post-Ukraine. So the British and French want a coalition of the willing to stand up against Russia and defend Ukraine. But the United States has effectively vetoed a plan to provide American air defenses to back a reassurance force for post-war Ukraine. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to say, okay, we're going to back up a NATO force going into Ukraine. That's what UK wants to do, is what Macron wants to do, what the failing EU wants to do, which is essentially a military solution. Okay, and that's just not going to happen. So the Europeans envision this strong, permanent security bulwark backed by the United States along NATO's Eastern Front. If Trump doesn't play, the Europeans are stuck with their own inability to do anything correctly and their own bankruptcy. So I think some of these things are going to have to unwind over the next bit of time, and it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm confident Donald Trump is going to be able to pull it off. I think Donald Trump has the ability and the insight and the wisdom eventually to say, I'm just going to make these executive decisions. We're going to get voting cleaned up. We're going to get the Federal Reserve done and redo the dollar. Getting through this bill, we have a threshold period of time here. I think the bill will pass. I believe that we're going to deal with Iran one way or the other, and Iran is not going to build a nuclear weapon, and the Ukraine war is going to end. But again, I understand Steve Bannon's frustration. where you say, Kash Patel, where's the indictments? Well, there's going to be indictments. And there's going to be, I believe, an investigation into the Russian collusion hoax. And I'm confident that in the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. We just have to be, in some ways, patient. We have to, in some ways, continue to hope and pray for Donald Trump. And I believe that we've got the best chance we've had in a long time to have the world straightened out. We're at a tipping point here. We go through World War III, or we end it past it without World War III, and we begin to put together a world that can live and have peace through prosperity. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today it is Thursday, June 5th, 2025. In the end, God always wins. God's going to win here too. Thank you for joining us. We're doing podcasts every weekday on CorsiNation.com. God bless. Please pass the word on the show, and we'll be back tomorrow.